Welcome to Bible Story Treasures, where timeless stories from the Word of God come to life. Today we journey back to the Valley of Elah to witness an incredible tale of courage, faith, and victory. Discover how a young shepherd, David, armed with nothing but a sling and unwavering trust in God, defeated a mighty giant. Let's explore the inspiring story of David and Goliath, a treasure of faith for all generations. Our story begins in Bethlehem, a small and humble town surrounded by rolling hills. It was here that a young shepherd named David lived with his family. David was the youngest of 8 brothers in the house of Jesse, and because of his age, he often found himself assigned the simplest yet most tedious tasks. His primary responsibility was to care for his father's sheep. David's days were filled with the routines of shepherding, leading the sheep to safe pastures, finding water, and protecting the flock from harm. It might have seemed like an ordinary job to others, but David approached it with great care. To him, every sheep mattered, and he would risk his own safety to ensure their well-being. Life as a shepherd wasn't without danger. Wild animals prowled the hills, and David had to remain vigilant. When lions or bears attacked his flock, David would face them head-on, armed with nothing but a wooden staff, a sling, and his faith in God. He had learned to fight with precision and courage, trusting that God would protect him. These experiences shaped David's character, teaching him not only bravery, but also the importance of relying on God for strength. David spent much of his time alone in the fields, but he never felt isolated. With his harp in hand, he often composed songs of worship, marveling at the beauty of the world around him. These songs would later become some of the Psalms, treasured by generations to come. In the quiet moments under the stars, David's faith grew stronger, preparing him for challenges far greater than he could imagine. While David tended his sheep in Bethlehem, a crisis was unfolding in the Valley of Elah, several miles away. The Philistines, a powerful and warlike people, had declared war on Israel. Their army was vast, equipped with iron weapons and led by skilled warriors. On one side of the valley, the Philistines' army set up camp. On the opposite hill, King Saul and the Israelite army prepared for battle. Between them lay the open valley, a natural stage for what was to come. The Philistines had a secret weapon, a warrior named Goliath of Gath. Goliath was no ordinary soldier. He was a giant, towering over 9 feet tall. His very presence struck fear into the hearts of anyone who saw him. He wore a bronze helmet, a coat of scale armor that weighed 125 pounds and carried a massive spear with an iron tip heavier than most men could lift. He also had a shield bearer who walked ahead of him, completing the image of an invincible warrior. Every day for 40 days, Goliath stepped forward from the Philistine ranks to issue a challenge to the Israelites. His voice boomed across the valley. "Why should our armies fight? Send one man to face me in single combat. If he defeats me, we will become your servants, but if I defeat him, you will become ours. Do you dare to face me?" Goliath's taunts echoed like thunder, mocking not only the Israelite army, but also their God. His challenge struck fear into the hearts of Saul's soldiers. None dared to step forward. Even King Saul, who was taller and stronger than most men in Israel, felt powerless in the face of such a formidable opponent. Each passing day of Goliath's taunts deepened the Israelites' despair. Meanwhile, back in Bethlehem, Jesse grew concerned about his 3 eldest sons who were serving in Saul's army. One morning he called David from the fields. "Take this basket of roasted grain and 10 loaves of bread to your brothers," Jesse said, "and bring these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. Find out how your brothers are doing and bring back news." David, eager to help his family and curious about the battlefield, rose early the next morning. He left the sheep in the care of another shepherd and set out with the provisions. As he approached the Israelite camp, he heard the sounds of horns and soldiers preparing for the day. When David arrived, he greeted his brothers and delivered the food. But as he was speaking with them, a loud, mocking voice filled the air. Everyone turned their heads toward the valley. and David saw a massive figure stepping into view. It was Goliath, clad in shining armor and holding his enormous spear. David watched in shock as Goliath shouted his usual taunts. "Why are you all hiding? Is there no one brave enough to fight me? Come on, send someone out." To David's astonishment, the Israelite soldiers began retreating in fear. They muttered to one another, describing Goliath's size and strength as though it justified their cowardice. David couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Why isn't anyone fighting him?" he asked one of the soldiers nearby. "Do you see how big he is?" the soldier replied. "The king has even promised riches, his daughter in marriage, and freedom for the man's family who defeats him. But no one dares to face him." David's oldest brother Eliab overheard the conversation and scowled. "Why are you here, David?" he snapped. "Shouldn't you be watching the sheep? You only came to watch the battle." David turned to Eliab calmly. "What have I done now? I'm only asking a question," he replied. But David didn't let his brother's anger distract him. He continued asking about Goliath and why no one had stepped forward to fight him. Word of David's bold questions quickly spread through the camp, and soon he was brought before King Saul. The king looked at David with a mix of surprise and disbelief. He saw a boy, young, without the physical strength of a soldier, and could hardly believe this was the person asking to fight Goliath. "You cannot go out against this Philistine," Saul said. "You're only a boy, and he's been a warrior since his youth." David, however, spoke with unwavering confidence. "Your Majesty, I've been taking care of my father's sheep for years. Whenever a lion or a bear came to attack the flock, I went after it. I struck it down and rescued the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turned on me, I seized it by the hair, killed it, and saved my sheep. I've done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do the same to this Philistine who has defied the armies of the living God. The same God who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the bear will deliver me from Goliath." Saul was moved by David's faith and determination. He realized that David's courage didn't come from his size or strength, but from his absolute trust in God. Reluctantly, the king agreed. "Go," Saul said, "and may the Lord be with you." To prepare David for battle, Saul offered him his own armor, but when David tried it on, he could barely move. The bronze helmet and heavy coat of armor weighed him down, and the sword felt awkward in his hand. He shook his head. "I can't fight in these," David said. "I'm not used to them." He removed the armor and chose instead to fight in his own way. David picked up his shepherd's staff, his sling, and headed to a nearby stream. There, he carefully chose 5 smooth stones and placed them in his pouch. Armed with these simple tools and his unshakable faith, David stepped into the valley to face Goliath. As David approached, Goliath saw him and burst into laughter. The sight of a young boy without armor or a sword enraged the giant. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" Goliath roared. "Come here, and I'll feed your flesh to the birds and wild animals." But David stood firm, his voice calm and steady. "You come against me with a sword, spear, and javelin," he shouted. "But I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, whom you have defied. Today the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. The whole world will know that there is a God in Israel, and all those gathered here will see that the Lord saves not by sword or spear. The battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." Goliath sneered, unimpressed by David's bold words. The Philistine giant took a step forward, preparing to end what he believed would be a quick and easy fight. But David didn't wait. He ran toward Goliath, reaching into his bag to grab one of the smooth stones. He placed it in his sling, swinging it faster and faster until the air whistled around it. Then, with precise aim, he released the stone. The stone flew through the air with incredible speed and struck Goliath square in the forehead. The impact was so powerful that it sank deep into the giant's skull. Goliath's expression changed from arrogance to shock as he staggered, his massive body swaying like a felled tree. Then, with a thunderous crash, Goliath fell face-first to the ground. For a moment, the valley was silent. The Philistine soldiers stood frozen in disbelief, unable to process what had just happened. On the other side of the valley, the Israelites held their breath, their eyes fixed on the young shepherd who had accomplished the impossible. David didn't hesitate. He ran to Goliath's fallen body, drew the giant's massive sword from its sheath and used it to finish the job. Lifting the sword high, David severed Goliath's head and held it up as proof of his victory. The silence in the valley shattered as the Israelite army erupted into cheers. Their fear turned to triumph as they realized the impossible had happened. Goliath was defeated. The Philistines, seeing their champion slain, panicked and fled in chaos. The Israelites surged forward, pursuing their enemies and securing a decisive victory. David returned to the Israelite camp as a hero, carrying Goliath's severed head and the giant's sword as trophies of his victory. The soldiers gathered around him, cheering and marveling at what they had witnessed. It was hard to believe that this young shepherd, armed with nothing but a sling and a stone, had defeated a seasoned warrior who had terrified them for 40 days. King Saul, hearing of the commotion, called for David to be brought before him. As David entered Saul's tent, still holding Goliath's head, the king and his attendants looked at him in awe. "Whose son are you, young man?" Saul asked, wanting to know more about this remarkable boy. "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem," David replied humbly. He didn't boast about his victory or seek glory for himself. David knew that it wasn't his strength or skill that had won the battle. It was God's power working through him. His faith and trust in the Lord had made the impossible possible. The victory over Goliath was more than just a triumph for David. It was a turning point for the entire nation of Israel. The Israelites, once paralyzed by fear, now stood emboldened by David's courage and faith. The Philistines, who had relied on Goliath's strength to intimidate their enemies, were now scattered and defeated. The battle was a clear demonstration of God's power and a reminder that faith, not physical might, was the true source of strength. The story of David and Goliath is more than just a tale of bravery. It's a timeless lesson about faith, trust, and believing in something greater than ourselves. David wasn't the strongest, the most experienced, or the best equipped warrior. By worldly standards, he was an unlikely hero, a boy from Bethlehem with no military training. But what set David apart was his unshakable confidence in God's power. David's victory over Goliath reminds us that true strength doesn't come from size, weapons, or experience. It comes from faith. David didn't rely on his own abilities to defeat the giant. Instead, he trusted that God would fight the battle for him. And because of that trust, David was able to face a challenge that seemed impossible. We all face giants in our lives, challenges that seem too big to handle, fears that paralyze us, or problems that feel overwhelming. These giants might not look like Goliath, but they can feel just as intimidating. Maybe it's a fear of failure, a difficult decision, or a situation that seems hopeless. Like the Israelites, it's easy to feel powerless in the face of such challenges. But David's story teaches us that we don't have to face our giants alone. When we put our faith in God, we can find the courage and strength to overcome even the greatest obstacles. It's not about being the strongest or the most skilled, it's about trusting in a power greater than ourselves. So what giants are you facing today? Maybe it's fear, doubt, or a challenge that feels impossible to overcome. Remember David's story. When he looked at Goliath, he didn't see an invincible enemy. He saw a man who had defied God, and he trusted that God would give him the victory. You don't need to be a warrior or a hero to face your giants. Like David, all you need is faith, courage, and a willingness to step forward. With God's help, the impossible becomes possible. The story of David and Goliath has been told for thousands of years, inspiring people to face their challenges with courage and faith. It's a reminder that no matter how big the problem, no matter how daunting the task, we are never alone. The same God who helped David defeat Goliath is with us today, ready to give us strength when we need it most. So as you face your own battles, take heart. Remember the boy from Bethlehem who stepped into the valley with nothing but a sling, a stone, and faith in God. And know that you too can overcome your giants. Face your giants with faith and courage. Believe, and the impossible becomes possible. David's victory over Goliath reminds us that no challenge is too big when we place our trust in God. So what giants are you facing today? Is it fear, doubt, or a struggle that seems impossible to overcome? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and stories of faith. If this video inspired you, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need encouragement. And if you'd like to hear more powerful Bible stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to Bible Story Treasures and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Together, let's keep sharing these timeless treasures of faith with the world.